According to the U.S. Treasury Department, the federal deficit has now reached more than $1 trillion.
Joining us via Skype with an update on the economy and its potential impact on the 2020 election is Professor of Economics and co-founder of Democracy at Work and friend of the show, Professor Richard Wolff.
That's right.
Great to see you, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Just give us an outlook of some of the indicators that you're looking at. And, you know, this president likes to tout the strength of this economy. How do things actually look?
Well, again, I approach these things as often as I can from a historical basis, the best we have to guess what the future is going to look like. Wherever capitalism has settled in the 300 years that this system has dominated the world, in every country, in every region, here's the pattern. Every 4 to 7 years, there's an economic downturn. It's called the business cycle, the recession, the depression. We have lots of words because it has never been overcome. It has never been stopped. Based on that, and if you remember that the last big downturn we had was in 2008 and 9, well, then we are overdue. And all of my economic colleagues, right-wingers, left-wingers, and those in the middle, we all know it's coming. You can't say which month or even which year exactly, but we are overdue. And the sad reality is when it takes longer to get to the downturn, it's usually a worse downturn that you pay then the price. And therefore, 2020 or 2021, you can bet much that there will be an economic downturn. And I have to tell you, even though I don't want to scare anybody, that this one is really likely to be bad, and for a simple reason. To react to the great crash of 2008 and 9, the Federal Reserve, as other central banks, cut interest rates, as you know, to historic lows, even going negative sometimes. It meant that money could be borrowed at virtually no cost. And every corporation, every government, and many people borrowed money because it was so cheap, which means that the level of indebtedness, government, corporate, and private, individual, is higher than we have ever seen it. You put together a likely downturn with overload of debt, and you have a recipe for very serious economic problems.
And so, Professor, that's kind of what we saw in the housing crisis. What sectors of the economy are currently loaded up with the most debt? Is it finance? I know that there's other consumer areas where there's a lot of debt. What are the indicators people should be watching here?
There are several, and you can really pick them because they're across the board. The single worst number is for student loans. The rate of default on student loans, and let's remember, sometimes people think student loans are a small business. They're not. We now have student loans totaling in America larger than the total amount of credit card debt that's out there, over $1.3 trillion. It's extraordinary. And that's got already the highest level of default, with tens of thousands of students telling me, I'm a professor, I talk to them all the time, telling me they cannot ever pay those bills back. They can't. They know they can't. And it sort of is a bomb waiting to go off. But we also have record levels of default now on auto loans. We have a serious rise in defaults on credit cards. And the mortgage issue is far from resolved, even with all the government support. And on top of that, corporate debt, as I've told you, give you an example, the Borden Milk Company went bankrupt a couple of weeks ago, and the CEO explained it was debt that made it impossible for that milk company that's, I don't know, 150 years old to survive, nor are they alone. So what you're seeing is this terrible combination of the accumulated debt, a result of the crash of capitalism in 2008 and 9, coupled with the delayed downturn. And again, that is a volatile mixture.
And again, looking at history, what type of political outcomes do you normally get from those types of crashes?
Well, you get what we're already seeing. You get a polarization as people become disillusioned, if you like, with the business as usual, our normal capitalist system. And you have the left wing already emerging in Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, etc. And then the right wing, which you can see a bit more strongly everywhere from Trump and Johnson in the UK on over to the other signs of that kind of right wing. The middle falls apart as people become very upset. The left wing criticizes capitalism. The right wing finds scapegoats like immigrants and other foreigners to beat up on. It's very classical and very much the historical norm when the society becomes too polarized into rich and poor and too troubled by the breakdown of the system that is occasioned by these downturns, such as the doozy we had in 2008 or 9 and the one that's coming down the pipe.
Professor, thank you so much. Always great to have your insights.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll have more Rising for you right after this.